Welcome to the daily. No, that's actually incorrect. This is the Breakaway USA show
It's another
with
show,
Mike
Fabian.
and David on today. Welcome. This is episode 11, and we have a great show for you today. If you're watching us live or if you're watching the recording, you're in for an action packed podcast because we have a lot of good things to talk about. We just got back from AmFest. Mike and I, David wasn't able to make it.
Mike, thanks.
And happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. And I truly missed out at MFest based on what you guys told me, huh?
Would have been awesome to have you there for sure.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did post a little kind of monologue on AmFest, so if you guys are kind of interested in learning deeper what happened, you can go on Rumble. The show's there, the Daily Elevated Show, so you can check it out there. But it was a great time. Had a lot of good times connecting with people, meeting friends, making connections, and I can't wait for the next one.
And the speeches were awesome too. There are a couple highlights for me. Are Patrick Bet-David's speech there. He was on fire there. That was one of the best speeches that I've, or monologues, if you will, that I've heard him deliver. Tucker Carlson's was awesome too. I mean, there was plenty of them. So it was really cool to see that energy in person and have,
And
there
these
was
guys were
13,000
really
people there.
these guys were really accessible too, right? You could
Right.
practice them, conversate with them.
Oh yeah, they were just walking around.
That's amazing. What a
Awesome.
community, huh?
Very cool. Yeah. There's not this like stardom fandom thing, everybody's just another person working towards the same thing. So that was a really cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're able to just
Gentry-
stop people in
Gentry,
the hallway,
Gentry just commented. He said studs. Gentry's a little busy, guys. He couldn't make it on this
Gentry, you're the
episode.
stud.
Yeah, he's the stud. He's the real stud
Mhm.
here. We're missing the real
Putting
stud.
in other work.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have been watching. I know we weren't going to talk about this, but it came to mind what Javier Milei has been doing in Argentina. It's pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yeah. So actually, there's a chart that I just saw posted today about everything that he's done.
He's
And
just
it's
gutting.
incredible
He's
how-
just gutting the government there. It's incredible.
He's gutting it.
Yeah.
He's gutting it.
The
And
one
he's essentially-
thing with Javier Milei that I have not liked through all of this is his long, warm embrace with Zelensky when he went to visit. That one gives me a little bit of, I don't know, reservations about him.
Well, he
I
also
know
met
that
with Bill
he's-
Clinton.
Did he? Yeah.
Oh yeah, he met with Billy C when he got. I think he came to here. I think came to the U.S. or somewhere.
Is this recently or this long time ago?
Well, the thing is, they have a lot of IMF loans that they have to figure out.
Mm,
So,
You guys have to remember Patrick Bet-David's new book. You got to choose your enemies wisely here. So,
true. That's a
I
very
think
good
the
point.
difference here between him and Trump, right, is that he's choosing his enemies really wisely. Like, I'm not saying that Trump chose the wrong enemies, but when you make the media the enemy, the CIA your enemy, it's kind of what Chuck Schumer said. The CIA, if you go against them, they have every way to get you. So
Yeah, it's
I
10
think-
ways to Sunday or something to get
something like that. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to clip that. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I really like what Javier is doing. I haven't seen too much, but every video I see, he's like gutting this, gutting that. It's like he's doing exactly what you
One set.
did with the board and whatnot. So
Yeah. So let me read this in case anyone's watching. and
Love
not-
it. He has the
listening, not
Gadsden
watching.
flag. That's awesome.
So 18 days ago, President Javier Milei was inaugurated in Argentina. Since then, he has eliminated 12 out of 21 cabinet posts, fired 5,000 government employees,
Afuera.
afuera,
fuera.
Yeah.
ending 380,000 government regulations. 380,000.
How is there even that many regulations? It's absurd. That's
Banned woke
that a typo?
language in the military. Bill to affirm the right to self-defense, which I didn't even know they didn't have, which is insane. Bill to legalize homeschooling of kids.
it's
Proposal
illegal to
punish-
homeschool your kids. Like that's what's
I didn't
crazy.
know how crazy Argentina was.
Yeah.
Until,
Oh man, it's just socialist nightmare.
proposal to punish all riot organizers. That one I did see. There was a massive organized riots by the people you would think would be,
The
Organizing
NGOs
riots.
for sure.
and the cops were not having it. They were using pepper spray. They were just beating him
Mhm.
back. Future welfare cuts for road blocking.
Amazing.
So
Welfare cuts.
protesters blocking roads are going to get.
That's so funny. It's implied that they're on welfare, just in that phrase.
Well,
That's awesome.
I think they're all on welfare in Argentina, but Yeah.
Oh, a bit. Well, so we looked at it. I think, what is it? 40% of the population works for the government.
52%.
52% of the population worked for the government. Like, what? How? No shit. The country doesn't produce anything, and it has hyperinflation, and
Yep.
people are starving. It's wild.
142% inflation is what they had. What they have,
Yeah.
or what
They were
have.
having a lot of immigration out of their people because there's nowhere to work. You can't make a living there, and you're going hungry.
Here's a big one: legalized paying contracts in Bitcoin.
Nice.
Ooh.
That's a big
He's
one.
going the El Salvador route.
Yep. Privatization of state-run companies, which is probably why the stock market is booming. I mean, booming. I think it was up 20% in one day. The entire stock market of Argentina.
I mean, it's all speculation to see what's going to happen, but I mean, how we know, as conservatives and people who've looked into this, the free market always garners more competition, more innovation, more productivity. It's inevitable. The nationalizing of all these companies is what did it in for Venezuela with Hugo Chavez. Nationalizing all their pipelines and the oil industry, and then they started not producing anything anyway. So that's a whole other tangent, but that's amazing.
And the last one is open up the Argentina oil industry, which is similar to the. Yeah.
My opinion about this is this is the perfect blueprint for any future president that says, hey, I'm here to take down the big government. I want to give the power back to the people, back to the states at least, and this is a perfect blueprint for it. Not just making the promises, but getting into office and in 18 days doing this. I mean, what? Eliminated unnecessary cabinet members, gutted the government employees, took out 380,000. I think it meant 380, but if there's 380,000 government regulations, and he gutted it out.
I wonder if that's a typo.
Yeah. I feel like that might be a typo.
I wouldn't be surprised though, because man, all they do is stack laws, and these legislatures don't even know what's in these bills, right? These huge bills that get passed that are 10,000 pages that get proposed the night before, and they have to vote on it the next day. These are written up by special interests, by pharmaceutical companies, by any of these other lobbyists, and they're just handed to them, and they're told what to vote on. It's these laws just keep. So there's a billionaire in Australia who I believe is dead now. Kerry Packer is his name, and he was being deposed in court, and what he said was basically the best thing that we could do is, if every time we want to pass new legislation, you have to repeal old legislation, so we don't have these infinite legal system that nobody even knows what the laws are anymore.
Yeah. There's a so Elon Musk does this in engineering, and he's talking about this in the legislative arena for the US, where if you propose one law, you have to remove two laws.
That'd be great.
That way you're not adding. So there's a book, and I don't know the name of the book, but it says that every time you go out into the world in a normal course of your day, you violate, I forget how many laws that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Without even knowing, because there's so many on the books.
So this is a quote from Tacitus from ancient Rome: "The more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws." I mean, this is something that is not. It's an old phenomenon, just like all of the things that we're going through. They're not new in terms of human behavior and human history. They're all repeated in some way or another. But this censorship thing is not the first time a tyrannical government has tried to shut down debate in the population.
And quickly, guys, I wanted to shout out Dutch Libertarian on Twitter. I just started following him, but that's where I'm seeing he's posting so much footage of Javier Milei from I don't know how he gets it, but shout out to him. That's where I'm seeing a lot of the stuff from on X, not Twitter.
X.
Yeah.
I'm forever going to call it Twitter. It just doesn't.
It doesn't roll out, just as
off the tongue as much. Yeah,
exactly.
What are you going to say? I
harsh one
instead of I
word.
tweeted.
Fabian, I was going to actually say this about just laws that you break on a daily basis. Every state has a bunch of dumb laws, and if you literally go on Google and just type in "dumb laws in my state" or maybe in your province for you, Mike, you'll find some ridiculous laws. Like in Georgia, if you walk across the street on a Sunday with an ice cream cone in your back pocket, you will get fined like $50 or you may go to jail or something like that. And you have to think about this. All these laws are created because something happened to make it happen, right? So, but then you get buried with these ridiculous laws, like you said, like, probably would never carry an ice cream cone in the back pocket, but you also have to think about what the hell happened in order for that law to come out. But,
yeah, absolutely. Like,
and that's something that's inconsequential to most of us, right? I don't think, now that you've said it, maybe I would think to do it, but for what purpose? I don't know. But imagine all the laws on the books that are actually meant to suppress the population and to exploit the taxpayer and the people.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Something else happened, Mike, in your neck of the woods, I guess you can call it.
Yes.
Apparently you don't sing the national anthem of Canada in English anymore, from what I'm hearing.
Wow.
Well, it's all about inclusivity, right? We got to include everybody. And are you going to pull it up? You want me to introduce
it? But but can you tell us what exactly happened?
Oh, Canada and Punjabi. That sums it up, actually. So I don't know how I feel about this because, look, there is a big Indian population, Indian and Pakistani population in Canada. So at the Winnipeg Jets game, the hockey game, they sung a rendition of the national anthem in a English Punjabi mix. It has a lot of, so here it says it unites Quebec nationalists and ROC conservatives. So ROC conservatives, I'm not sure who
right
they
of
are.
Center.
Right of center conservatives. Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so in Montreal, they sing the national anthem in English and in French. It's a mix. So they say "Oh Canada" in English, and then they have the
So you sing it twice in a row.
No. So it's like it's embedded in it. So it goes English, French, like the regular "Oh Canada" part, the chorus is said in English, and then there's the verse that's in French. Yeah. But so French is a national language. French is the, people in Quebec would argue that it's probably the first language. And there's a lot of problems with language laws in Quebec. That's something we can talk about another time. And we are going to be starting to do a bit of a Canada talk,
which I'm looking forward to. I mean, I'm not part of it. Obviously I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I'll have you on. I'll have to have everybody on and discuss the nonsense going on up here in the Great White North in communist Canada, Justin Trudeau's communist Canada. But so this situation with the national anthem being sung in Punjabi, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I don't really care that much. I have a lot of liberal friends that liberal friends are the ones who brought it up to me, and they were like, why would you do this? What other country sings their national anthem in a different language that's not one of the main languages, the primary languages of the country? Think about the US. Spanish is the second most prominent language. I don't know if it would be determined or considered a national language, but you don't have the American anthem in Spanish. Why would you need to? You don't need to. I mean, to make people feel included.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. That's the only reason that you need to do that. And it's always so funny when they start to do this just to make people feel more inclusive, right? To reach more into their identity politics playbook. And then they get a big backlash from it because in reality, that is the most racist thing that you can do, right? It's a bunch of white liberals that constantly feel some type of white, guilt or whatever. And they're like, let me try to make more people feel inclusive. Hey, we have a big population of these people. Let's sing in their language the national anthem, not realizing how racist that is in their own eyes, right? It reminds me of like
being
Democrats.
Used.
Yeah, they're being used. Exactly. It reminds me of Democrats here in America that they call like Latinos, right? They made up a new word from Latinx, right?
Latinx,
to make them, and I'm like, you as a white liberal Democrat trying to be more inclusive by calling them Latinx or whatever.
Oh, Latinx,
Latinx, yeah. Then, like, come on now.
Then you have the Latinos saying, "What the hell is this nonsense? Who came up with this crap?"
Yeah, it's like 90% of them say, like, I don't want to be identified as this. Like, what is this crap, right? And that's what I mean about it.
AOC calls herself Latinx, right? Or she
does, and she gets a bunch of backlash from it all the time, right? She's like, we need to be inclusive, yeah, in the language, the absurd language that they use in Congress of birthing people, like. Right,
she should be calling herself a moron X.
Moron on X. She's always on Twitter, you know.
She spends a lot of time on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's basically all she does. I mean, she hasn't passed any meaningful legislation that I've ever heard of since her time being in Congress. So
I would love
don't
to
really
see
know what
her
she
write
does
an
other than-
article. I don't think that she is very literate, to tell you the truth.
Bartender, right? So
I mean, nothing wrong with bartenders. A lot of smart bartenders, but I mean,
yeah.
she was handpicked. She's one of these people that was handpicked by, a George Soros that checks all the boxes, that has attitude and a narcissistic personality.
she's a typical sassy, like New York Latin lady who's going to get in there and whip up some butts or whatever she says.
Yeah. But so this kind of lends itself to the replacement theory idea that has been, so it goes along with the Great Reset, and they had the Great Replacement theory, which I'm not completely well versed in, but the idea is essentially that our governments want to replace, not just in America and Canada and in Europe as well, primarily I think in Europe, actually, where it's actually happening. They're funneling migrants in and then giving them the vote, which we're seeing here in America, which is one of the most insane things ever. They want to have, they're opening up the border, allowing millions of migrants to come in, and then want to give them the vote. It's like you're not even trying to hide it,
Guys,
Yeah.
Gentry just sent me something right now. I got to pull it up because it's goes along exactly what we were talking about, and it was our next subject. Vivek Ramaswamy just posted this on X, coming to America soon, and he literally reposted the
Perfect.
thing
That's
we
what I was
just
thinking.
talked about right now.
Perfect.
Look at that.
The
See?
same post.
The playbook.
awesome.
This is a perfect blueprint for those that actually want to tackle the big government. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Vivek is talking about. He's talking about gutting the FBI, gutting the CIA. They're unconstitutional executive bodies. And
Yeah.
one thing I'm going over, so I'm scripting this. Excuse me. I'm scripting this foundational document series, and one of the biggest things that the founding fathers thought was a threat to liberty is standing armies. And so we have the largest standing army in the history of the world. Basically, a standing army is an army that is kept up in times of peace. So the founding fathers created a provision in the Second Amendment so that we would have well-trained militias. A different way of looking at it, which I came across recently, is that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, these are the modern standing army. Most of our military is abroad in the 800 military bases we have in like 100 different countries, which is, that's a whole discussion which I've juggled back and forth between, because it could, anyways, that's a different story.
Yeah, power projection and making sure that people do what you want
Yeah,
to do with soft power rather than having hard power. You have soft power and influence, and I mean, basically, America's been paying everybody off to play nice, and it's not working anymore.
And there's a big actual realignment when you look at the geopolitical environment of it. You have China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, right? Brazil, India, right? They're all kind of aligning together, even to the point of where they're willing to dump the dollar and create their own BRICS currency, right? It's the name of all those countries put together, right? But yeah, no, it's not working anymore, definitely. And I'll blame foreign policy. Like the problem with American foreign policy is the reason why we're here. So it's really the fault of our foreign policy.
There's also
such a long
the leaders of
discussion,
these countries are also trying to prepare themselves for whatever may be next, the possible fall of America from its grace. So I think a lot of it is just positioning. So Peter Zeihan, who I listen to a lot, he's a great geopolitical strategist. He talks about how BRICS is never going to work. He says they tried this before, and it's always countries that don't produce anything, and then China, basically. And who's going to control this currency? Is it China? And all these countries are okay with giving China
just
the ability to run everything? Like, why would you, as a sovereign nation, give another nation and adopt their currency? Like, for what? And anyway,
Fabian,
China and India
actually,
have water.
So I want to kind of push back on that, actually. So I want you to think about it from a different perspective of what BRICS is trying to do here. I think that China has depended on America's economy way too long. And if they actually want to, quote unquote, become this hegemony or whatever, right? They're
Mhm.
going to have to
Hegemonic
somehow
power.
not depend on America anymore, or at least cut away from how much they depend on America. So how do they do this? They build new economies in continents that we as America have failed to produce their economic prosperity, right? Latin America and Africa. That's exactly what BRICS is targeting. If they're able to somehow produce economic prosperity there and make sure that these huge continents are going to rely on China, India to produce everything for them, then they're never going to have to worry about American sanctions, European sanctions, anything like that. I think that's the geopolitical strategy here. And I think that they're going to succeed because America, for the longest time, they're like, oh, how do we get Africa out of poverty? Throw a bunch of money in there. That was the dumbest thing that they could do. You need to create their infrastructure. Then you
Well,
got to make sure that they can
that's what the
actually
French did.
maintain their infrastructure. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly, right?
that's what the
So,
French did compared to the Portuguese. The French had the idea that you can teach the African countries to be self-sufficient, built a bunch of infrastructure. Most of the countries that were colonized by the French part of Africa did pretty well. The Portuguese had the opposite idea. They were like, don't ever let them get power. So you see the
So
Portuguese part,
control from a place of power,
yes.
which
So those
requires
places
your
are the most
resources.
destitute. However, in order to, well, actually, in order to push back on what you said, yes. However, China doesn't really produce anything high tech. I mean, they produce cheap electronics. Even the chips
But they
that they
produce a lot
produce,
of the components that we need,
well,
right?
some, but not the high tech ones, which is what you
Okay.
really need. So a lot of the low to medium tech chips, China produces great. This is why they need Taiwan. Taiwan is really the only country that produces these high tech parts. And there is a chain of logistics that goes from Taiwan to Germany, who produces components for those high tech machines that make those chips. So China doesn't have any of that, which is
Mm.
one of the reasons why I think they want it back. But they don't know how to run it. So what are they going to do then? It's just like the Russians. Basically, ExxonMobil and all these oil companies were the ones who were producing the oil for Russia. They were running the machines that were way past their lifetime, but because the ingenuity of these American engineers, they were keeping those things alive. And now that they're all gone, how long can the
They've been
Russian oil industry
copycats. Yeah.
stay afloat?
They,
And once those wells freeze, in the 80s when the Soviet Union was collapsing, a lot of those wells became frozen, and because it's in a permafrost
it's in
region,
Siberia, a lot of
it's
it.
insanely hard to unplug them once they freeze over, and that's what's starting to happen already, which is pretty wild to
Interesting.
think about.
Yeah, China has not done much innovation. They're very good copycats, and they're very hardworking population and people. But so at AmFest, we met this group of people, this organization called the New Federal State of China, and there is a big Chinese resistance within China. The thing is that China, communism has to spread to survive. They have 200 million people unemployed. 200 million people of work that are capable of working unemployed. They have to spread, otherwise they will not be able to maintain their economy. And their economy has been a house of cards for a long time. So the person that started this New Federal State of China organization is Miles Guo, and Steve Bannon was also a co-founder. But Miles Guo is somebody who was essentially exiled from China. He basically fled and was living in New York, I guess as a not a refugee, a political asylum, yeah, something like that. But now he's being detained in New York. I don't know all the details about that, but so it's the same thing with Jack Ma. Jack Ma started Alibaba, and they essentially took it from him when it got too big and too powerful, right? So China's in a weird place where they can't sustain this economic system that they have, which is not founded in a very productive and free market system. They went from a completely communist economy in the 80s, 90s, and they were starting to westernize, but the communists, the CCP, still have full control of the currency. They can manipulate the currency, which doesn't make sense if you're working on a free market on a world scale where nobody else can manipulate the currency in the same way. I mean, the central banks can to a certain extent by printing and increasing interest rates, but they can't actually change the value of the currency and devalue the currency so that it incentivizes more foreign buying. But so China, we're going to see there's a lot of talk of China being an enemy. And another aspect is we have to look at their population. They're at 1.23 billion people. I just looked this up. India as well is at 1.4 billion people.
Yep, they overtook China.
What do you think that India's population was in 1950?
Probably 800 million.
It was 350 million.
It was America.
That's wild. So 350 million in 1950 over a 70-year period, they quadrupled.
Yep.
That's mad. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's labor.
You go to
military.
India, you go to India, it's insane there. I mean,
it's booming. No, it's a growing country, but there's a lot of poverty. Like still a significant portion of the population is
there's generations of poverty, but they don't see it the same way that we do. Like being homeless is not what it is to us that it is to them. It's just being a Buddhist. It's a different mentality, because when I was there for
they're Hindus.
3 months.
A lot of them, most of them are Hindus.
Yeah. So you have the Buddhist in the north, and then in the south you have more Muslims.
Okay.
Yeah. So
then Pakistan is all Muslim.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting. Yeah.
Speaking of India, and I know we were talking about the Belt and Road Initiative. There is something. There is a competition that the U.S. is setting up to basically overtake the Belt and Road Initiative, because the Belt and Road Initiative, it's being perpetrated by building, number one, by giving loans to countries, high interest loans with the Chinese yuan, and they have to make friends with all these countries that they're not really friendly with and don't really trust them, right? So here comes America doing their thing, saying, you know what, you want to build that? Guess what? We already have a leg up on you, because we're already friends with these countries, and it's called the IMEC. It's called the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. So this is basically the counter to the Belt and Road Initiative.
Council on Foreign Relations. Oof.
Yeah, so this is being pushed really hard. So this is to counter Xi Jinping's foreign policy. These are the countries that it would go
Silk
through.
Road. Yeah.
Do you remember
Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Europe?
Do you remember what I said last week on the podcast, or how many weeks ago it was, that the real problem that in the Middle East crisis right now is the fact that Hamas took away this corridor ability, because they were going to build it from Israel with Saudi Arabia, and it was going to flourish, right? Because me and my friends, we always talk about this. War isn't so necessary if you're going to trade, right? Because we can all lay down our weapons if we all start to make money, right? I mean, so if you can start to trade with each other, then you can start to normalize relationships to a degree, right? So I think that was going to be the most beautiful thing in the Middle East, that it was going to somehow kind of stabilize the region a little bit, normalize relationships, especially with Israel and all these Arab countries that it's surrounded by. And Hamas destroyed that, honestly.
So here's
over and over, time after time.
Over and over, exactly. Time and time and time and time, because Israel has so much resources that it can send through the Middle East up to Europe, Saudi Arabia, same thing. They can trade back and forth. I mean, just them normalizing tourism, allowing Israel to be able to fly into Saudi Arabia and back and forth, has brought in so much revenue. Imagine what it's going to create through this economic trade.
The Gaza Strip and the West Bank could be flourishing if they decided to have economic relations with Israel. But the problem is that this is what people that are on the left, or I don't want to say pro-Palestine, because it doesn't explain the situation. People that are very extreme in their view about this situation on that side, they don't understand that the Palestinian people are being used in the same way that black people and gays and everybody else
Chinese being used diaspora.
Here. Exactly, they're being used in the same way there by Iran and by these other countries that have other geopolitical strategies that are in play.
Paying off the leaders to guide the people into self-destruction.
These people
same thing every time. Same thing.
They don't value their own people's lives the same way that normal people and countries do. It's Hamas is you can equate it with ISIS. To it's a very tough discussion. But
Yeah,
it's a very, very tough discussion. I think you're so right with this about not labeling it a certain thing because it's so complex, and the right language here is so important for this discussion. So
yeah, to add on to your point, David, yeah, you're right about the pipeline issue. So the IMEC is supposed to go through Israel. There's also this hydrogen pipeline that is being built because, you know, blue hydrogen or green hydrogen is like the next big thing that they're going to try to push. If you look at who's been getting all of these trademarks and patents on hydrogen, it's pretty interesting to see. This is this massive new economy that they say is going to revolutionize everything. It's going to essentially fill the gap that we have because all renewables aren't really working right now. But you're trying to get off coal, you're trying to get off all these other energies, and you don't want nuclear energy because that's the easy ways to solve it. But it's hydrogen, and there's different kinds of hydrogen, but specifically it's green hydrogen. And there was a pipeline that was being proposed, and I saw maps of it going through two different countries. The first I saw where it was going through Egypt to Europe, and the second was Israel to Europe. So when I saw that, I said, hold on a second. I saw two maps, one going through each. Clearly, both of these countries are going to want this pipeline because it's going to generate so much profit for them. And I was thinking, everything leads back to money. Everything leads back to commodities and resources.
And power, but they go hand in hand.
Exactly. That has something to do with what we're seeing in Palestine. Like you said, maybe Hamas doesn't want this pipeline to go through there because they're just going to get more money and richer. Like there's a lot of moving parts, but it has to do with all of these pipelines that are trying to be built to that region. 100%, no doubt in my mind, because everything comes down, like I said, to just resources.
That's interesting. But so I think that you're right, but I don't think that it's Hamas. I think Hamas does not have a long-term strategic plan. I think that they are being used by people like Iran, who does not want that to happen, right? They're being used by other countries that want Israel wiped off the face of the map. Hamas is a very one-dimensional, aggressive, radical faction that does not, in my view of it, have anything other than the destruction of Israel in mind. And that's the problem. Is they don't even they're not thinking about their own people. They're thinking about this ideological obsession that they have. They're not thinking about, we
like
want
the
our
left,
people.
you mean?
Sounds familiar, right?
It's like the left. It's literally their playbook.
It's all,
you're not an individual. You're part of this cult. You're expendable, but you do everything. You base your entire life around this identity, not your individual identity, but this group identity. And no matter what you want, that's secondary. The primary goal is that whatever group goal we have as one.
Well, that's the son of the founder of Hamas. That's what he was coming out and saying, right?
He said that.
Well, the son of, we've watched this video multiple times. The son of one of the founders of Hamas talking about him getting out of Hamas.
I remember he made a video. I don't remember.
One of the hardest things. I mean, he's had plenty of interviews and whatnot, but he's saying that they indoctrinate kids at 5 years old into this ideology, and it's
you should see their the kids television, like the kids programs, where it's a clear difference when you look at what's happening here in America. Kids, childish, Teletubbies, whatever it is, and there it's everything based on their ideological drive. Their
really
Sharia law. Honestly, it's very, very, very unfortunate because, Fabian, what are the front row called in the chess game?
Your pawns.
Your pawns.
Yeah,
that's exactly what Hamas is. They're pawns for Iran. That's what all of these militant groups are. That's why they could care less how many people are dying, right? And especially if you have the entire population indoctrinated that if you are going to die, then that is good. That is a good thing, and because you're going to go, you're going to be celebrated. You're a martyr and all that stuff.
77 virgins and.
Which is funny on its own. Actually, I saw a video on this, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it was a legit documentary. And they said that when they were translating old Arabic to current Arabic and writing the old Quran to today's Quran, whatever, they mistranslated that it's 72 virgins. They actually meant 72 raisins. So I always think about how funny that is. Imagine that, they know all of this, and then they get to heaven. It's like they get 72, or heaven they go to hell, and then they get 72 raisins.
Is this a parody?
No. It's like an actual documentary. I think it's like on PBS or something like that. But they were discussing like Islam and whatnot.
Little do you know.
Little do you know. But yeah, no, it's just very unfortunate because as much as you want to feel very, very unfortunate for the people in Gaza, you have to look at the polls. And I understand some of these polls might not be too accurate, right? They're under pressure and whatnot.
Yeah.
And, but look at the videos you saw on October 7th and them parading and celebrating and stuff like that. It's because it's an entire population that has been under the control of these political pawns that are being paid off by the king, which is Iran. And they could care less what's happening. You die. It's all in the name of, whatever thing that they sold them to. So
the other thing is that Hamas over time, so Hamas in 2005, I believe it was, Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip completely, and they allowed an election to go on, and they voted Hamas in. But since then, any detractors, any Palestinians that criticized Hamas as the government were killed. You were not allowed to even criticize the regime at the time. They would kill you. They would imprison you. They would forget about journalism, forget about honest journalism. That did not exist there. So what's baffling to me is, look, people in the West, a lot of people that are chanting these things that I think are doing it ignorantly. Perhaps not in an evil way, but like most things, it's an ignorance that guides it. But they don't understand what the political, the economic system is there, like how things are actually governed there. Yep. They just see this thing that's being reported and the horrific images and videos, and they make their decision on that alone.
Yeah, so and people. I was just going to say one more thing is that I feel like people just, like you're saying, they don't know the history of it. They don't know the political environment there, everything that's happened there. Like, people don't realize that before Hamas, it was Fatah. That was the political party in power there.
The PLO.
The PLO, yep. And their like political party name was the Fatah. And the second that Hamas won, a civil war occurred in Gaza, and they threw any Fatah member, PLO member that was left in Gaza, they threw them off the top of the roofs. They killed them, right? So where did the PLO go? They went to the West Bank, and that's how you have the West Bank. I feel like people don't even know this stuff. They hate each other, right? They don't agree with each other. They don't even, where I would say the PLO kind of tries to negotiate with Israel and kind of follows Israeli laws and tries to do everything they can to create a two-state solution. Hamas does the complete opposite. So it's
So we could go on forever about this.
So switching gears a little bit, I did want to bring in something that made me laugh, because I'm sure you've all seen that everyone in the Republican Party is dunking on Nikki Haley. Absolutely dunking. If you were at AmFest, every single speaker you heard up there was just smashing on Nikki Haley. Number one, and now if you don't know who Nikki Haley is and you're listening to us or watching us on all of the internets, she was the ambassador to the UN. She apparently was bankrupt and then got on the board of Boeing, I believe, started making all this money from defense contractors, has the personality of a raisin, and is not inspiring
72
whatsoever.
Raisins.
72 raisins. But now she has the backing of people like Larry Fink from BlackRock, George Soros,
Does she? I have not seen that.
They're all funding her campaign. Yeah.
What?
That's why even like Vivek is talking about this.
Because they're doing anything they can to not have Trump come back in.
Well, the neocons have all gone to the Democratic Party. The neocons are people who basically say strike first. That's America's policy, a strike first, ask questions later. And they make money on war. Now, we all know war is one of the biggest generators of profit, generationally especially. So she is basically the new Hillary Clinton, where she says anything her donors wanted to say. And all the true conservatives know this.
That's a hot take right there.
That's a hot take. And so I wanted to pull up this video of Vivek just calling out Nikki's corruption. And she has no response to it whatsoever.
Nobody does it better.
You're a multimillionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. And to say that doesn't affect her is false, because it's after that meeting later that day that she says that every American needs to be doxxed by having their ID, their government-issued ID, tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics. But I will say this. It is going to take a leader from the outside with fresh legs from the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Now you're a...
So, I mean, that's what I
rough.
call dunking on someone.
Oh, yeah.
And exposing, I would say, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Just putting it, I mean, in terms that are unequivocal. Tucker Carlson at AmFest went off on her. Yep. He's just like, she's not a real person. She's like, I think it's a mask. Like, she's just a caricature of this thing that is being imposed on her. Or he went off about her, like literally probably mentioned her 10 times. It was awesome.
Yeah. So did, well, obviously Vivek was there. We spoke, talked about her. I think really every big speaker there talked about Nikki Haley, not positively. And now I see these polls where apparently she has like 30% of the Republican people that will vote for her. And I think it was Jake Shields or something. He has something like 600,000 followers on Instagram. He says, please, if you are a Nikki Haley supporter, please write it in the comments, because I've never seen one anywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was
that
any
tells you a lot about
these
polls.
Yeah.
No
manufactured.
So
like
what
the election?
I mean, what's crazy to me is like Chris Christie, for example, being on that debate stage.
He's the best fundraiser, though. That's why.
Is he? Yeah.
That's why. The only reason you see Chris Christie every single time that there's a Republican presidential like primary like this,
He just wants a little attention.
He just wants attention, and he knows how to raise. You know, one thing I'll give it to him: he was the governor of New Jersey, so somehow he won kind of a blue state there, right? But man, he's just good at fundraising. That's why you literally see him on stage every single time there. But, you know, we're talking about BlackRock, like funding Nikki Haley and stuff like that. And do you guys know where that all started, actually?
Go ahead.
BlackRock?
Not BlackRock, but like companies funding elections and candidates and stuff like that. I mean, you can actually think, and as much as I hate to say it, is the current conservative Supreme Court, you can think Trump's, you know, candidates and whatnot. They allowed the Citizens United versus, I think, FEC ruling to happen, which essentially in 2019 allowed companies or corporations even to start to funnel money into elections, into candidates, into organizations.
Unlimited money as well.
Unlimited money as well, right? Because they weren't able to at first, but then they started to sue and to try to bring it up to the Supreme Court, because they essentially wanted to say, hey, look, we're people as well. You know, a corporation, we're people, right? So, and so if you're upset about this, then you should be upset with the Supreme Court, and you should be doing everything you can to try and make it not possible. Because if you look at how much money was in elections in every single election cycle,
exponentially higher.
Well, it was normal. And then you see 2020, boom. And both Biden and Trump took massive amounts of money from corporations, right? So I think Vivek is right here, right? I would say both sides are in the establishment, right? You got donors on the left, donors on the right, and sometimes they're the same exact donors. I wouldn't be surprised if BlackRock is funding Biden as well, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're a hedge fund, you hedge your bet with
they're funding Nikki,
downside.
Funding Nikki Haley to go against Trump, to put a hamper in Trump, nothing to do with her actually wanting her to be elected. I don't think.
Yeah, you know, there's a few. So I was a Yang Gang guy back in 2020. I loved Andrew Yang. He was like the progenitor of Vivek. Basically, he was this young guy, younger from this generation. He had these really interesting and like super unique, out of the box ways of thinking to fix the economy. Even the way that that the economy is rated, the GDP, all this. Anyway, he had a lot of good ideas, and one of them was how you get money out of politics. And Vivek is kind of parroting some of the stuff that he said and taking it to the next level. But it sees just common sense solutions like, hey, you know what? If you work for the government, when you get out, you can't work for a consultant agency that's going to put you back in politics for what I think it's 8 years or something like that, or 10 years. So your power wears off because it's a revolving door. You get in Congress. When you're done being in Congress, then you go work for this NGO or this big organization or corporation to go influence politicians that you were just with and probably have dirt on to get them to vote the way that your company wants you to vote. You know, there was something that one ex-congressman said, and I'll never forget what he said. He goes, and he was on a board of a company that was bought by China, and he was one of the board members. And they wanted to move all of the production to China, but this company was a made in America kind of company. And he says, "What do I do? On one hand, my fiduciary duty is to this corporation to increase profit. So if that's what I'm looking at, then yes, I would want to move offshore, get rid of all these American jobs. The other side of me used to be a congressperson. So I know that America should come first. So what do? I'm in a predicament. And it's sad that you shouldn't have people even be in that predicament in the first place."
Yeah. The money in politics has to go. So on that note, the money in politics is, especially for the executive branch, for the presidential election, for the House of Representatives and for the Senate. Okay, so this is something that I'm going to be going over in detail in a different series, but this is very important for understanding why America is becoming more and more, or closer and closer, to a democracy. And the founding fathers hated democracy. Every single person that you can describe as a founding father had something not just negative to say, destructive to say about democracy and how it always leads to despotism. But so they devised a mixed form of government with the monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy represented in the executive branch, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. And the Senate was never popularly elected. The Senate was the two senators from each state were chosen by the state legislatures. So each state legislature they appointed and voted on within each state. So then these senators did not have to campaign. They did not have to raise money. So these people were people that were well known in society, that were, just wise people that each state legislature chose to represent the state's interest. Now, so I believe it was 1913, the 17th Amendment was passed and made it so that all senators in each state were now popularly elected instead of appointed by the state legislatures. The other thing is, so that is a whole aspect of money being, exploded in politics. The other thing that Bill Federer, who I had the chance to meet at AmFest, explained to me, or brought up to me, is that today we have 435 seats in the House of Representatives. Before that, at the founding of the country, there was a provision that you had to have one member of the House for every 30,000 people. So if that was the case today, then you would have roughly 10,000, maybe 11,000 members of the House of Representatives. Now, to some that may seem insane. Where are you going to house all these members of the House of Representatives? The reason why it was capped at 435 is because there's 435 seats in the chambers of the House. So they capped it there. But so today, one member of the House of Representatives represents 760,000 people, roughly.
Yep.
760 to 30,000. This delegate does not have any relation to the people that they are actually intended to serve, right? So
yeah, and that's why globalism will never work, because you imagine a globalist take over the entire world. If you think they're removed from, the representatives are removed from the real people,
of course.
Think about someone in Davos making a decision for someone in.
They don't care about representation.
In Palestine, Ohio.
Yeah. No.
And then, so speaking of David, when you mentioned the money in politics, I pull up this chart, and it is unfathomable.
Yeah, you just
Look at this
look
right
at
here.
that. That's the first year. That's not 2024. That's the
So,
first
guys,
year that I was allowed.
if you're listening and you can't see,
That's $4 billion.
in 2012, the total amounts of spending on presidential campaign
Holy
was
smokes!
1.4 billion. In 2016, 1.5 billion. In 2020, it was $4 billion.
Hmm.
It went from 1.4, 1.5 to 4 billion.
But even 2007, 8, to, starting 2008, it doubled from 2004, right? So
Now
2008,
imagine what it's going to
first
be
year
now.
Obama came along.
That
And
means
all that
all
money-
of Wall Street can funnel all their money into
Yep.
any candidate that they want to. You want BlackRock to do the same, Vanguard, you choose it, right?
Yeah.
Any of these corporations can now put any money that they want to into election candidates, right? And
They essentially own the government. I mean, they already did through their lobbying when people were elected, but now they just can handpick their.
So I
go
want
ahead.
you to think about this even further. We know, based on the Missouri case right now against the Biden administration, that the Biden administration or team, campaign team, was actively meeting with these, social media companies, and they were doing everything that the social media companies were requesting them to do. How much money that we're looking at right now on this chart represents this? How much money did they give the Biden campaign, the Biden administration, in order for them to do everything that they say to do? Censor Trump, take Trump off the, Twitter and stuff like that, right? I mean, we're looking at it right now. Follow the money. We're right there.
Let me clarify something, just because I'm going to ask you, because so you're saying that they got funded by these various corporations, but then the Biden campaign team went to these social media companies and asked them nicely to get rid of misinformation and disinformation. So you're saying that money of these donors went towards them essentially breaking the First Amendment of the Constitution, the first article of the Bill of Rights, that should be, punishable in the legal system, especially if it has to do with a politician. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Pay to play, pay to play. That's exactly
Mhm.
what's going on. And I mean, we can probably go to another story after this about the Pfizer thing, but we're one of like 2 countries in the entire world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise. And not just to advertise, these are corporations. So guess what? These corporations are now able to put any money they want to into these presidential candidates, right? So
Yep.
all of this money is influence, right? And they're influencing our politics. And that's the biggest problem, because if politics is meant to be played for the only reason is like to represent our personal interests, and then you put money in the middle of the people's interest and that politician representing us, they're not representing us anymore.
No.
Oh no,
That's a great point.
clear. It's clear.
Money is the root of all evil.
Mm.
That old time saying that we grew up hearing has never stopped being true. Just because we want to advance our way of thinking or go deeper, it's going to be true always. Money is the root of all evil, and I think we can leave it at that.
Can I end it off on one quote? Actually,
Yeah.
a very
Oh,
very simple one.
yeah. Go ahead. I want to hear this.
So, but this actually it ties in perfectly. This is actually Alexander Hamilton, who is a darling of the left, who I'm learning more and more was not the best founding father, if you will. He was somebody he was responsible for the first national bank. He was responsible for pushing the idea of keeping a standing army in a time of peace. He was what they would call then a monarchist. So basically so he wrote the Federalist Papers. He wanted the federal government to have more and more power. But so even he said this, and all the founding fathers said something similar, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, but this is what he said: when a government betrays the people by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the people have no choice but to exercise their original right of self-defense, to fight the government. And so he doesn't go as far as other people, or how it says in the Declaration of Independence, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security, meaning it is the right of the people, when the government becomes tyrannical, to essentially have a revolution and have a rebellion and absolve the government, not absolve, to dissolve the government and establish a new government. So that ties into what we're seeing. We know how corrupt it is. We have the receipts. Now we're at a point where I think it's time to fight. And like that Chinese woman said, if we don't fight like it's 1776, we're gonna have to live like it's 1984. So
and I think
that's
we'll
where we're
end
at.
on that because I love that quote she said, and I just quoted it I think yesterday on the Instagram live.
Yeah.
So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. We didn't know it was going to go this way, but this is the way it goes because it's organic, and this is where it has to go because it's the truth, and that's all we speak is the truth and nothing but the truth. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you on the next one.
Take care, folks.
Good night.